This is the Nike Air Jordan 1 Low Golf. In the newest colorway of green, black, and white, I think this might be the coolest golf shoe in Nike's current lineup. And today, I'm going to walk you through some of the unique features of this shoe, put it through a series of performance tests, and finally, I'll give it a score to see how it ranks against other top performing golf shoes. I'm beyond excited about this shoe. The design is nearly identical to the original Air Jordan 1 basketball shoe that was released in 1985 and was the first Jordan signature shoe. Over the years, Nike has re-released the Air Jordan 1 in a variety of different colorways in a high, mid, and low top, and now they've released the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf, which has taken the iconic design and added a golf-specific outsole. The Jordan brand makes up a significant part of Nike's current golf shoe lineup. You can even see Jordan golf shoes being worn on the PGA Tour, perhaps most notably by the very popular Tony Finau, who wears this actual design in competition. Jordan himself is an avid golfer, so it made sense when 6 or 7 years ago, the Jordan brand was brought into the Nike golf footwear division. Since then, Nike has released several retro designs, including this Air Jordan 5 in wolf gray and this Jordan 12 in the iconic taxi colorway. As the game of golf continues to surge in popularity, it's intersecting with other subcultures like sneakerheads. And what you're now finding is that when Jordan Golf releases a shoe like this, it's often sold out within minutes and becomes a collector's item of sorts. This colorway, for instance, is already sold out. Let's take a closer look at some of the unique features of this shoe, starting with the outsole. As you can see, the outsole is a green spikeless design, and in my previous reviews, I've discussed the pros and cons of spikeless designs. The pros mostly come back to comfort. Spikeless outsoles are usually a little more flexible and a little softer than spiked outsoles. A traditional spiked shoe requires complex construction, including embedding a receptacle, which the spike actually screws into. This usually necessitates using harder outsole materials and oftentimes limits the placement and amount of foam that can be used in the midsole. So, generally speaking, a spikeless outsole might be associated with being a little more comfortable, and it allows more design flexibility. The cons are that when these traction lugs start to wear down, the performance of the golf shoe is going to decrease, which could lead to slipping during your swing and just a lack of general traction while making your way through the golf course. My take on spikeless versus spiked outsoles is evolving a bit. I've historically been a diehard fan of spiked outsoles. I like the predictable traction they provide, and they appeal to the frugal part of me because I know that a spiked shoe theoretically has a longer life. But there have been changes in the materials that are being used in spikeless shoes that now make the traction lugs more durable, and additionally there's a lot of science that's going into the design of spikeless outsoles that are allowing them to achieve high levels of traction performance. So the durability and performance gap is starting to close between spiked and spikeless shoes. This outsole has a traction pattern that's very similar to the original 1985 shoe. And this is not just to pay homage to the original, but is actually quite functional. This traction pattern was pretty revolutionary when Nike came up with it nearly 40 years ago. It allowed for high performance, multi-directional traction on the basketball court. I'm not sure if it was just a happy coincidence or if Nike knew, but I've heard rave reviews about the traction that this shoe provides on the golf course. This certainly is not a traditional spikeless golf shoe outsole pattern, so it's kind of cool that old technology developed for basketball shoes is applicable to modern day golf shoes. The intersection of 1985 basketball technology and modern day performance doesn't stop with the traction pattern, but can also be seen in the construction of the entire outsole itself. This is what's called a cupsole design. If you picture the shoe in two pieces, the bottom part and this entire top part, the bottom part forms a cup in which the upper is placed, and they're joined together by glue in what's called a channel stitch. This is a very durable construction and is again a throwback to the high level of performance that was needed from the original Air Jordan 1 basketball shoe. Later in this video, I'll put the outsole through some performance tests, including a traction test, and I'll measure the hardness of the outsole, which will give us an indication as to how durable it might be. But as it stands right now, I'm really loving the color and design of this outsole. Although you can't see it, between the outsole and the upper, there is a midsole, and the midsole in this shoe is interesting. There is actually an air unit in the heel that is very similar to this shoe. And this one has a clear plastic window, and this one is fully encapsulated. So although you can't see it, there actually is a pressurized air unit in the heel. The forefoot midsole is where we start to see the first drawback of this retro shoe design. The Air Jordan 1 essentially has no forefoot midsole foam. You can see how thin and flexible it is. Modern day athletic shoes and most performance golf shoes use high-tech strategically placed foams in the midsole, which improve comfort and performance, especially for long days on the course. Check out the Adidas Tour 360, for example, which uses a super high-tech boost foam in the heel and forefoot, and the Nike Air Zoom Victory Tour 2, which uses a Nike React foam in the heel and forefoot. The Air Jordan 1 essentially has no foam here. And although some people like that because it makes you feel closer to the ground, modern shoe design theory shows that using foam across the entire midsole has a number of performance and comfort advantages. Let's move on to the toe box. The toe box can be broken down into two main components. The front black strip, which can be referred to as the mud guard, and the green top part or vamp. Together they make up the toe box. And the mud guard is not just for style, it actually protects the shoe from damage and provides additional structural support. And the toe box in this shoe seems a little bit tapered or narrow, so I'll be curious to try these on and see if they're roomy enough for me. Let's take a moment to talk about how awesome this green colorway is. Green is the de facto color of golf. Golf courses are green, the Masters winter jacket is green, so I'm a sucker for green golf shoes. This deep green color in particular is perfect. I think the green colorway provides this shoe with unique character, but I think it also remains classy in its own way too. The combo of green, black, and white makes this shoe fit right in on the Muni course, and I think it's actually perfect for non-stodgy country club attire as well. Moving from the toe to the quarter, we have the traditional Nike swoosh done in black leather, laid over a white leather panel. Moving from the quarter to the heel, not much remarkable about this heel design other than this awesome Jordan logo. Have a look at that. What an iconic design masterpiece. Moving to the top of the shoe, this tongue is relatively thin and doesn't have a lot of padding. I typically like to see a little bit more padding and structure in a golf shoe tongue, but this tongue design, I believe, is a performance sacrifice that had to be made to stay true to the design of the original basketball shoe. Moving on to the collar. This collar has a surprisingly nice fabric and foam. Golf shoe collars are constructed with foam and are covered with either leather or a fabric material. And you can see another example of a fabric lined collar in the Air Zoom Victory Tour 2, and an example of a leather lined heel in the Adidas Tour 360. These materials make a big difference in the comfort of the shoe because they're in constant interaction with your foot and ankle. If the leather, fabric, or foam is low quality or poorly designed, it can lead to ankle discomfort and dreaded heel blisters. This material is super smooth and finely woven, and the foam feels nice and dense, like a memory foam. And it extends down into the heel section, and I expect this is going to be immediately comfortable and require almost zero break-in. The insole has the Jumpman logo and the word golf, The insole itself is fairly soft, but also fairly thin. The entire upper is made of leather, which has been dyed and topped with a coat of colored polyurethane. This is pretty standard in leather athletic shoes, but as I'm sure you've seen before, this PU coating can start to separate from the leather and can start to crack, which definitely compromises the looks of the shoe. I haven't seen or heard any reports of this happening in the Air Jordan 1 Golf, so hopefully this upper will hold up after several rounds of golf. This does have a 1-year waterproof warranty, and later in this video, I'll submerge it in water for 5 minutes to test how waterproof it is. That wraps up the design overview, and again, this is a really cool mashup of older technology that appears to cross over really well into a performance golf shoe. Now it's time to try these on. Okay, so first impression is pretty good. You know, when I was looking at the shape of the toe box, originally I thought it might be a little bit too narrow, but that's not really the case. I wear a size 13 and I have a little bit of room at the end of the toe box and enough width, so not too loose, not too tight. Moving back to the arch section, and the arch hits me in not quite exactly the right spot, but it's a relatively mild arch, so it doesn't bother me that much. Moving into the heel, there is not much of an effect from that heel air unit. You can't really feel much bounce from it. It feels pretty firm. And moving into the back of the heel and the collar area, that foam and nice fabric does feel really good. The shoe is flexible right out of the box and is lightweight and feels like you could take it immediately to the course and it would feel great for the whole round. Styling the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf in the green colorway with a pair of shorts that's a collab from Malbon Golf and Dockers, and a polo from Malbon Golf from their Golf and Bass Club line that has a green collar that matches the Air Jordan 1 quite well. Now it's time to put the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf through a series of performance tests, which will include taking it out onto the course for a test round. Now it's time to test for waterproofing. To test how waterproof this shoe is, we're going to take a sheet of cobalt chloride paper and we're going to wrap it around a shoe tree. And we'll put this inside of the shoe and we'll submerge the shoe for 5 minutes. This cobalt chloride paper will turn from this blue color to a white or pink in places that it comes in contact with water. Here's an example of what happens when this blue cobalt chloride paper comes in contact with water. You can see it turns pink and eventually it will turn fully white. And even just a drop of water you can see indicated on this sheet of paper. Now we're going to prep for the waterproof test, making sure the cobalt chloride paper is well placed inside the shoe. And submerging. And you can see the water line is above the outsole, above the channel stitch. Testing to make sure that the glue and the channel stitch that's holding the outsole to the upper is indeed waterproof. Now we're going to leave it in the water for a full 5 minutes. And we'll pull it out, making sure not to get any water inside the shoe, and we'll dry it off. And as we can see, there are not really any pink or white spots. All right, I'm gonna run a second test on this shoe to test if these holes in the toe box are gonna let water in. Placing back in the water to test the toe box waterproofing, and we'll leave it in for 2 minutes. All right, let's see if any water got into the toe box. Okay, pretty impressive actually. So there's a little bit of pink from the first test, and I think this might just be residual moisture in the shoe from wear testing them. No real signs of water getting inside the shoe. So this is what it would look like if water had gotten into the shoe. So even if we put a drop, you can see how pink this turns, and eventually it'll turn it all the way white. So that's what it would look like if there was real water penetration. And if the toe box had leaked, it would look something like that. I'm gonna get a reading of the hardness of the outsole, and I'm gonna use a short A durometer to test the hardness. Typically, the harder the outsole, the more durable it's gonna be. And the softer it is, the more grippy it'll be on harder surfaces, and it'll provide a little bit more cushioning. Also, a harder outsole is gonna penetrate into the ground a little bit more, so we're kind of looking for a moderate number for a spikeless outsole. And for this test, I'm gonna compare it to the Stan Smith Golf, and this shoe has a lot of similarities to the AJ1 Golf in that this was a retro design that was adapted from another sport, being tennis, and created this really cool golf shoe and uses a spikeless outsole. So let's test the outsole of the Stan Smith Golf against the AJ1 Golf, and I'm also gonna compare it to Nike's very popular 270G. So using the short A durometer, we're gonna press this into the sole of the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf, and we're gonna get a reading of 63. And now let's test the outsole of the Stan Smith Golf, and we get a 63. On the Stan Smith, I'm also gonna test one of these spikes individually and see if it's different than the rest of the outsole. And the spike shows up as a 75. Let's compare that to one of the spikes or lugs on the Air Jordan 1, and we get a 65.5. Moving on to the Nike 270G, and we get a 71. So the Jordan and the Stan Smith have the same outsole hardness of a 63. However, the individual lugs or spikes on the Stan Smith came in at a 75. So I think this shoe might be utilizing a dual compound outsole with a little bit softer layer as the base and a harder layer for the spikes, which will make them a little bit more durable. And if we compare that to the outsole of the 270G, which had a 71, this is a harder and more durable outsole than what would be found on the Air Jordan 1. Now, it makes sense that this is going to be a little bit softer outsole because, as we talked about, there's not a lot of extra foam that goes into this shoe, and the midsole is quite thin. And so that extra softness in the outsole is going to provide a little bit more cushioning. And as you can see in the 270G, you can use a harder outsole because you've got this huge airbag here and a lot of forefoot midsole foam as well. So comparing this outsole to a lot of the other spikeless outsoles that I've tested, this is definitely on the softer end of the spectrum. And the pros of that are that this is gonna have a little bit more cushioning, but the cons are that this may end up wearing down a little bit faster. Moving on to the grip test. We're testing the grip at various angles which can simulate on-course conditions and the stress that a full golf swing might place. Starting with the short turf and moving all the way up to a 45-degree angle, doing the same thing on the long turf, and traction is good all the way up to a 45-degree angle on the long turf as well. And let's get a weight for the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf, coming in at 1 pound, 0.5 ounces. And let's compare that to the Stan Smith Golf, coming in at 1 pound, 0.9 ounces. And let's check the weight of one other sneaker type golf shoe, the New Balance 574, coming in at 1 pound, 0.2 ounces. Now I'm gonna take the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf to the course and see how it performs. Stepping on the tee box of a 375-yard par 4, and the Jordans feel pretty good. It's not the most snug shoe, and there's a little bit of movement of my foot inside the shoe, but all in all, comfortable and felt good. Pulled the drive to the left, missed the fairway pretty bad, and left myself 115 in. And with the gap wedge, threw an absolute dart, one of the best shots I've hit in a while. Leaving myself about 6 feet for birdie, and it didn't go in. Tap in for the par. I just finished my second practice round, and it's time to give this shoe a score. Let's start with style, and I'm gonna give the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf a 9 out of 10. And in particular, I'm rating this green colorway. This shoe comes in a few different colors, including all white, all black, and a couple of other colors as well. And to be honest, I don't love those other colorways. And this green color is really the one that caused me to buy this shoe. Again, I'm a sucker for green on a golf shoe, and this particular green I think is just amazing. So, you know, even if you didn't know that this was an iconic shoe, and if you didn't know this was almost an exact design replica of the original Air Jordan 1, this still is just kind of a cool looking shoe. For people that don't know otherwise, if they see it on the golf course, it just looks like a fun, cool Nike golf shoe. And this looks good in shorts, in my opinion. I think it also looks good in pants, so it's versatile as well. So all in all, 9 out of 10, very high rated on style, and I think it's just absolutely awesome. I'm a big fan of basketball, grew up watching Michael Jordan, so I'm a little bit biased towards things related to Jordan. So, you know, might have tipped the scale a little bit, but 9 out of 10, solid design. Moving on to performance. This shoe gets a 7 out of 10. And while no one would mistake this for a super high performance golf shoe, that doesn't mean that you can't play high performance golf in this shoe, as has been seen by guys like Tony Finau wearing this on the PGA Tour. However, this shoe does lack some of the standard and more traditional features that you might find in a high performance golf shoe, in that you might find a little bit more structure in the upper, you might find a little bit more padding in the tongue, as well as elastic holding the tongue in place, or maybe an inner sleeve. And a high performance golf shoe is typically going to have a little bit different shape and silhouette that lends itself more towards high performance golf. The use of a spikeless outsole on this shoe actually doesn't seem to compromise the performance that much. Typically though, on a high performance golf shoe, you would see a standard spiked outsole. However, as we saw on the grip test for this shoe, it didn't slip at all at 45-degree angles on the short turf and the long turf. If you compare that to the test that we did with the Adidas Tour 360, which is Adidas's top of the line tour level shoe that has a ton of aggressive tread, it actually slipped on the 45-degree angle on the short turf. So this outsole performs really well, felt great on the course, had zero slipping on the course all throughout 27 holes. So this is a kind of a sleeper performance golf shoe. Moving on to comfort. I'm gonna give this shoe an 8 out of 10. And honestly, I was kind of stuck between 7 and 8, but then I remembered something. When I got home yesterday after my first practice round in these shoes, I realized maybe 3 hours after I'd gotten home that I was still wearing my golf shoes. That's pretty unique. Even relatively comfortable golf shoes, you're looking forward to kicking them off after the round is over. So yeah, super lightweight, super flexible. You kind of forget that you're wearing them. You forget that you're wearing your golf shoes. And the heel padding was nice. Yeah, found them relatively breathable as well. You know, it is a bit thin on the forefoot. There's not much padding or foam in this area. There's not a whole lot of bounce in the heel either. So really what this shoe lacks in modern technology and modern foams, it makes up for in being relatively lightweight, breathable and flexible, and requiring almost zero break-in. So yeah, a pretty darn comfortable shoe. That makes the total score for the Nike Air Jordan 1 Low G in the green colorway a 24, placing it in a tie for the third highest rated golf shoe on the list. And I think that's an honest, good place for this shoe on the list. It was carried by the high style score, giving it a 9 out of 10. The only other shoe that I've given a point higher than that, or a 10 out of 10, was the Nike Air Zoom Victory Tour 1. And this is a special edition that is a collab with Pendleton and Seamus Golf, and just has some really unique features and some really high level design. So this one gets a 10 out of 10. This uses a very rare buffalo leather. So just 10 out of 10 for this shoe, but 9 out of 10 for the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf. Absolutely love the green colorway. And then also this was low-key a high-performing shoe. Great traction. It was also decently comfortable. So it checks a lot of boxes. You can wear this for a serious round, a round that you actually need to have high performance. I think as long as it's not super muddy, this shoe should work really well. You can wear it with shorts, pants, so it's versatile in its styling, and you could easily walk around in these shoes, but they also look awesome if you're just trying to style out in your cart round as well. So all across the board, I recommend this shoe. Nike knocked it out of the park with the Air Jordan 1 Low Golf, and the green colorway just puts it even further over the top. I hope you enjoyed that review, and if there are other golf shoes that you'd like me to review, let me know in the comments. Also, check out the other reviews on my channel and subscribe to stay up to date for all future golf shoe reviews.